Good evening, well, good afternoon here in California, and I think good night in Uganda. And the rest of the world, how are you out there? Uh, Here I am on Truth to Free Africa, Kinyonyi Rukara. Truth to Free Africa, Kinyonyi Rukara. I'm here because of the concerns about our beloved country, Uganda. However, I have decided to make this channel, Truth to Free Africa, Kinyonyi Rukara, in appealing, in other words, to appeal to all the good citizens of the world, of course, including Ugandans. And I think I said it last time. The reason I'm doing this is because I have noticed that you can't really be so sure about even your own indigenous Ugandans, own Africans, own black people, white people, everybody, as to what is hurting the world today, as to what is hurting especially African people today. African people, we are being mistreated all over the world. Even in our own countries of Africa, by our own black African leaders. So it leaves me with the idea that the only way we can get rid of the suffering in Africa is if we appeal to all the people, in other words, to all the good citizens of the world. Because I can tell you for sure, there are bad citizens of Uganda that have been supporting a Rwandese Tutsi refugee, British neo-colonial puppet usurper dictatorship in killing our people. Indigenous Ugandans, just because of money, just because of ignorance, naivety, some of these people support a refugee group that usurp their own country's government. This bothers me. And even when you go and write on social media, you don't see that energy, that anger to do something about it. It disturbs me to see that within my own country, there are people still supporting a refugee group imposed upon the people of Uganda by the British neo-colonialists that has killed over 3 million indigenous Ugandans. It bothers me. And even here in America, I see there are those people who really sometimes don't know what's going on within the black community, within black lives, within the suffering of black people, the racism. You find some of them that can't even understand why the things are the way they are. Fortunately, we have good people, African Americans, even white people, that joined in the struggle recently against the killing of brother George Floyd. And it's that issue and the demonstration that followed by all Americans void of their colors, which led me to thinking, okay, I am going to make a YouTube channel where I can ask all the good citizens of the world to join African people in fighting against the genocide in Africa. The genocide in Africa that is taking place not because of white people, I mean directly, it's the Africans committing genocide on their fellow Africans. It's the African police and military killing their own citizens worse than what one would expect them to do. I can see trying people for crimes, but to attack people purely on political grounds, kill them, torture them. And in the situation of Uganda, we have a Rwandese, Burundian Tutsi refugee group that has been imposed on the people of Uganda by Britain. Formerly was also involving the Americans. But now with President Trump, we have seen a change of heart with the coming to power of President Trump. He promised not to support dictators in Africa, which we should all welcome. But so far, within our own Africa, the African Union has done nothing to address the issue of the Rwandese Tutsi refugees committing genocide in Uganda, committing genocide in Rwanda, committing genocide in Congo. They seem to have gone along with the British manipulation of what the situation is in the Great Lakes region, or who is responsible for the genocide in Rwanda, in Uganda, and Congo. Well, by the way, in Uganda, there's been no mention of the genocide in Uganda. The only mention of genocide we are listening to over and over is the Rwanda genocide. But that Rwanda genocide was committed by the Rwandese Tutsi refugees who usurped Ugandan government, backed by Britain and the former Reagan American administration to come to power in Uganda. A refugee group. In order for them to come to power, they committed genocide on over 1.5 million indigenous Ugandans. In reports, Museveni, the Rwandese Tutsi usurper, admits to 800,000, 500,000 people killed in Ugandan genocide before the Rwanda genocide. But they blame third parties, which they've come, Museveni and Kabila have become masters at doing that. They blame it on tribalism, they blame it on any other group they can find by themselves. Museveni, Kagame, and Kabila were in Uganda refugees. This information needs to be explained to the world. Museveni, Kagame, and Kabila were refugees in Uganda. Museveni, Rwandese Tutsi, Kagame, and other Rwandese Tutsis imposted as indigenous Ugandans, mainly from Western Uganda. But there were many of them who were impersonating other tribes of Uganda, impostering as in other tribes of Uganda, mainly Western region, but Buganda. Buganda is one of the regions of Uganda the Rwandese settled when they came from Rwanda. And they got to learn the languages very well, almost all the languages of Uganda. They took advantage of Ugandan hospitality and adopted even the names, even the local names of different Ugandan groups, tribes in this case. And they've gone on to lie to Ugandans, to lie to the world that the problem in Uganda is tribalism. Well, the problem in Uganda is occupation by Rwandese Tutsi refugees who have committed genocide, close now to 3 million people, and they're continuing to do so. Land grabbing, because they had no land when they came to Uganda. Land grabbing has become the worst issue right now facing the indigenous people of Uganda. It's high time that indigenous Ugandans got over the fear. I get tired of listening to people complaining, but when they complain, they don't know how to complain in the right way about who is oppressing them. They keep using euphemism out of fear, because Museveni and Kagame and Kabila have killed people brutally in the way that you cannot even explain to the world. They've raped women as a way of scaring people. So many indigenous Ugandans live in fear of ever even mentioning the word Rwandese, Burundian Tutsis. But it's these people that are killing indigenous Ugandans. They continue to kill indigenous Ugandans, imprison indigenous Ugandans, because they have a Tutsi 50-year master plan to take over Uganda, Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and even South Sudan. Because as you can see, they even helped to keep the dictator in Sudan, South Sudan, Kir. Because Kir depends on the Rwandese Tutsis. Surprisingly, the UN colludes with these people. The UN has been colluding with Museveni, Kagame, and Kabila. Last time we saw the UN truck was caught with, flipped, turned over with tons of minerals being taken from Congo through the border of Rwanda. And now we understand that Rwanda has a mineral industry that Rwanda doesn't have. Rwanda has, is it gold? I think gold refining industry. And Rwanda is a conduit for the minerals that are being stolen from Congo. Surprisingly, Rwanda, Kagame was made one of the top guys was made actually the head of the UN military force that is supposed to keep peace in South Sudan. So this leads us to thinking that there is collusion between the world powers and the Rwandese Tutsi refugees control of the region. A minority that are committing genocide day in, day out. There was a mass murder of people in Kasese. It was exposed, photos were taken, but the world news media, Western media, did nothing about that issue. I keep seeing people complaining. Like today I saw a certain Collins Mwanga talking about how come. In fact, he says, I can read it. He says, I need to understand something. How can Karangwa, a Munyarwanda, be in charge of Buganda affairs in the NRM ruling party of Uganda, Rwandese Tutsi ruling party? This is a concerned indigenous Ugandan asking, I need to understand something. How can Karangwa, a Munyarwanda, be in charge of Buganda affairs in the NRM? There is no Ugandan in charge of Rwandese affairs in Rwanda. This is like an insult. This has nothing to do with tribalism. This is a clear signal. It's a clear signal that the Rwandese have indeed taken over Ugandan government, and they're continuing to take over even traditional institutions of Uganda, backed by Britain. So what are we Ugandans going to do about this? Are we going to sit around and let it continue? Continue hiding for the Rwandese Tutsis and the genocide they committed that has never been reported? We have to report about the genocide in Luwero. I've been appealing to Ugandans that if we don't do that, the Rwandese Tutsi refugees and the British are going to turn Ugandans into slaves in our own country. It's already happening. They have intentionally impoverished the people of Uganda. Most of the top positions are occupied by the Rwandese. In the military, in the government. So it's up to us indigenous Ugandans to bring this information out. Failure to do so may lead to even worse genocide taking place in Uganda once more. I am really afraid that Ugandans are digging their own grave when they fail to bring out the issue in the media, in international forums. We need to bring out the issue of Rwandese having usurped Uganda government. We cannot talk about how the Kabaka had a Rwandese wife, or how the Kabaka had a child from a Rwandese woman, or how Kyagulanyi is married to a Rwandese wife. I respect Honorable Kyagulanyi's wife and family, but it should stop there. Because many of you know that Obote was married to a Muganda wife, but Obote killed a lot of Ugandans. Obote killed a lot of Baganda. Obote destroyed the kingdom of Buganda. It was Obote who made statements like, a good Muganda is a dead Muganda. How can an African make a statement like that? If you made that statement here in America about a race, you will not be looked at kindly. You will be despised. But how can we Africans encourage statements like that? And especially with the Rwandese in control of our government. They're encouraging divisive speeches. Only when you talk about the Rwandese, and when they encourage the divisive speeches, not talking about them. Because Ugandans today, any smart indigenous Ugandan, any Ugandan who cares for Uganda should be talking about the Rwandese takeover of Uganda government and the committing of genocide of over 3 million people. Any Ugandan that is patriotic should do that. If we don't do that, we are betraying our country. I'm reading the news yesterday. I was reading the news yesterday. And the story is the Kabaka, they don't know where she is now. His own kingdom, his own people don't know where the Kabaka is. Some are saying he's very sick. Some are saying that the Katikiro has something to do with his sickness. Or in fact, stories have come out that the Katikiro is a puppet of the Rwandese. And he's even said that the Katikiro himself is not a Muganda, he's an imposter. It seems that the Rwandese Tutsis are using a lot of Africans that immigrated to Uganda and giving them positions of power in Ugandan government, in Uganda, and in the Ugandan traditional institutions. All this is being backed by Britain because Britain continues to finance a minority refugee group that has usurped a host country's government. We helped the Rwandese. We gave Rwandese a place to stay, go to school, and did not discriminate against them. That's why they were able to infiltrate all positions of power in Uganda. But instead of them using that opportunity to help Ugandans build a viable economy, build a viable government, the Rwandese Tutsis decided to be used by Britain and its colonial agenda. Britain has a colonial agenda not only for Uganda, but for the entire Great Lakes region. That's why I feel that President Trump has made a difference. Because President Trump said he will not support dictators. And if any of you saw President Trump's 2019 UN speech, President Trump emphasized the idea of sovereignty of nations. In his speech, he emphasized the idea of sovereignty of nations. And I personally think that President Trump is being hated mostly by these European former colonizers of Africa. They keep talking negative things about him. We had France and Canada, a Commonwealth British satellite, saying negative things about Trump. And I feel all these things are due to the fact that Trump supports sovereignty of nations. For all those Africans out there, please understand, do not be moved by emotions of President Trump being a racist. I still feel that President Trump now is the better choice that could happen to Africa. For what I've seen with Obama, for what I've seen with Clinton, what they did in Rwanda, how they blocked the UN report about Museveni, Kagame, and Kabila killing our people in the Great Lakes region, where we've lost close to over, some people are saying 20 million. But so far, we know that over 6 million people were killed in Congo. Over 3 million in Uganda continue to die. In Congo, it continues. My fear is that when these neoliberal, systematic racists come to power, they're going to continue with the same old policy of Clinton, Obama, Reagan, and Bush's of working with Britain and France in their neo-colonial agenda in Africa. So we Africans have a responsibility to bring this information to the world, that Africans are human beings too. Just like here in America, they're saying Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter extended to African Lives Matter. And in Africa, we're having real genocide taking place. Unfortunately, the British, the French, and the Israelis are working with the Rwandese Tutsi refugees to take over the wealth of the Great Lakes region. We are appealing to all the good citizens of the world to join African people in opposing the support, in other words, in opposing the outsourcing of genocide to criminal African rulers like the Rwandese Tutsi refugee minority that has been imposed on the people of Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. How could the whole of Africa have been against white minority apartheid in South Africa? In South Africa alone, yet support a black African minority, a black African minority, to take over Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. The African Union has a responsibility to come to the aid of the people of Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. You cannot continue to tell us Kagame this, Kagame that. Kagame is a genocidary. Kagame was with Museveni committing genocide on indigenous Ugandans. That's how the Rwandese were able to usurp the Ugandan government. After killing 1.5 million indigenous Ugandans, impostering as indigenous Ugandans, because we had been so nice to them, they were able to infiltrate Ugandan society and become us. One thinks that when they left Uganda, some of them, that they left to Uganda. But what happened is one group of them decided to stay in Uganda, which is Museveni, Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, Amama Mbabazi, Salim Saleh, Kutesa. This group of Rwandese Tutsis decided to stay in Uganda and rule Uganda. They have a grandeur plan to take over the entire region. And I keep reminding people that the American newsletter called African Confidential African Confidential newsletter. It's a college magazine. It's a college newsletter. In 1993, 92, 94, reported that there was a plan by the Rwandese Tutsis to take over the entire region and build a Tutsi Hema empire. Mind you, they used two words, a Tutsi Hema empire. For those people who don't know, especially in Uganda, well, especially in the whole world, but Uganda in particular, they may mistake that to mean that Uganda and Bahima were involved in this. No, this was all a plan by the Rwandese Tutsis to use the Hema in their plan, the Hema in their plan, include the Hema in their plan, because they had become the Hemas of Uganda. What I'm saying is they had imposted as the Bahima of Uganda. Today, people think it's the Bahima, Banyankole, who are ruling Uganda. It's actually the Rwandese impostering as Banyankole, impostering as all the tribes of Western region. I can show you, for example, there was a young man called Muhumuza in Kienjojo who was groomed by Muhammad Nsereko's father, another Rwandese Tutsi, who some people thought he was a Nubian. Nsereko is a Rwandese Tutsi. His father was the RDC in Kienjojo. This man groomed Muhumuza with a Toro, my own tribe's name, but a Rwandese Tutsi who we had helped assimilated within us, and then they used that chance to support the most oppressive genocidal dictatorship in Africa. Not only a dictatorship in Uganda, but a dictatorship that has caused humongous suffering all over the Great Lakes region. The Rwandese Tutsi usurper dictatorship in Uganda, which sent Kagame to invade Rwanda and ended up causing the genocide and participating in the genocide. But because of their support by Britain and the American administration then, Clinton, Bush and Clinton, later Bush Jr., they took over the government of Rwanda, where they are a minority. The Rwandese are only 15% of the population of Rwanda and Burundi. How could the African Union talk about whites in South Africa? Yes, I understand, we had to do that. But how can you have done that and then turn around and support an African Rwandese Tutsi refugee group that, by the way, doesn't even believe they're black, because the Belgians brainwashed them to think that their straight noses make them white. So what have they done? They've gone on to believe it. And they have actually stretched it to the point where they're now saying that they're Jews. Lack of understanding history. They don't even know what a Jew is. But because of their greed for power, they're willing to claim anything to be supported by the Israelis, to be supported by the whites, because they don't consider themselves Africans. And that's why exactly the British, the American former administration, and the Israelis are supporting these killers of indigenous Ugandans. Sadly, African countries have stood by and are still there watching. Some of them even interacting with these Rwandese Tutsi killers of Ugandans, saying nothing about it. The African Union should be having agents, spies, that go to individual countries in Africa to look at who is killing who is oppressing who. America has a federal system that goes out and looks at every state. You saw recently, Trump saw things going on in other states. He said he cannot support what's going there. He sent the National Guards there. Okay? Africa could be in a position where not necessarily maybe sending military, but they could at least know that these groups of people are not right for this country. These groups of people, minority oppressing Ugandans, a refugee group, oppressing Ugandans, oppressing Rwandese. Yeah, they tell you Rwanda is good, but that's because Rwanda is a puppet of Israel and Britain, and so they are setting it up as one of the countries where they can have their staging for colonizing the entire Great Lakes region. That's why I'm appealing to the good citizens of the world to help Africa against these crooks that are trying to take over the African continent through genocide. And they're using Africans themselves to do it. That's why we need people from all over the world to say, no, this cannot happen. You cannot tell us that slavery is over. You cannot tell us that colonialism is over while you're supporting the genocide of Africans. And where some of our people here, African Americans here, are saying Black Lives Matter. And you're making us think that the neoliberal systemic racists are making us think that, oh, Black Lives Matter. They support Black Lives Matter. Or Trump is a racist. Trump is a racist. While we know that it's the neoliberal systematic racists that supported genocide together with the Reagans, Bush, and Clinton, and Obama. That actually Obama blocked the UN report on the genocide in Congo and the looting of Congo. We cannot afford to be deceived any longer. It's very interesting that recently I'm reading that Africa is going to be a point of discussion during the November elections. I wonder where that came from. Was it because Trump said he was not going to support African dictators? Could that be the reason why now even the Democrats are saying that they are not going to support, they are going to have Africa as a point of discussion during the November elections? Many of us Africans are concerned because there are terrible things taking place in Africa. And the former government of Obama made it even worse by sending more American troops. That's why many Africans are, in fact, happy that this President Trump is discussing about withdrawing AFRICOM troops from Africa, or some of the troops from Africa. Having been around for the years I've been here, I never knew that American troops would be in Africa for some excuse. Why do we need American troops? Why do we need foreign troops? America does not want foreign troops in America. That's why some Americans are very ticked, because they think the UN is trying to take over American sovereignty. I've had American white people even complaining about that. They don't want their country to be occupied or to have foreign troops on American soil trying to keep peace like it's happening in Africa. But that's what the globalists want. The globalists want Africa to have foreign troops. We saw what the UN is doing in Congo. You saw Indian troops. They were starting to cut out their own territory by giving guns to certain African groups so they can get some of that gold. You wonder, what are African leaders thinking when they allow the Chinese, they allow the British, they allow UN troops to just come and run wild in Africa? This has to stop. But right now I'm appealing to all indigenous Ugandans to stop fearing exposing Museveni and his Rwandese clique that are killing Ugandans. We have to come out and say, why can Basajja Mivule and a Uganda, supposedly, I don't know, maybe even a Rwandese Baganda imposter, come out and talk about one group of Uganda, the Banyankole, so much so that the Rwandese Tutsis used it to preempt talking about the Rwandese who are really controlling the government of Uganda, impostering as Banyankole, impostering as Bahima. That's all their technique. They're using Basajja Mivule to come and talk Banyankole. Oh, so they shout and shout, oh, that's tribalism, so that nobody dares talk about Banyarwanda that are killing Ugandans, that control our government. that even tried to kidnap here in America, impostering as Baganda, impostering as Ugandans. They tried to kidnap me here during the Kyagulanyi conference in San Francisco, where I went to see Honorable Kyagulanyi. We should be fearless because we are already dying. They're already trying to kill us wherever we are. They're trying to kidnap us. Yes, they gave me a wrong address here in America, San Francisco. Gave me a wrong address, and when I went there, there were 2 cars parked there to kidnap me. Indigenous Ugandans, I'm appealing to you. Stop fearing and stop hiding for the Rwandese Tutsi genocidaries. They are killing us. They might even be going to kill the Kabaka. Already information is available. We had recently Fred Kajubi informing us that they plan to kill the Kabaka of Buganda. And they plan to use those kind of incidents to commit genocide on Ugandans and make it look tribal. It's not tribal. The situation in Uganda is Britain maneuvering with their Rwandese Tutsi puppets to kill Ugandans and own Uganda. Use a small minority to own the rich gold and diamonds and oil of Uganda and the rich agricultural soil. Britain, leave Uganda alone. Rwandese, leave Uganda alone. We want peace. The only thing we can do is right now expose you and use people's power to defeat you. Our people are even afraid, even when they know the Rwandese are the ones killing them. They can't even mention them because they're so brutal. Even when you are abroad, your life is in danger. They poison Ugandans everywhere. Ugandans have been killed in South Africa. Ugandans have been killed here in America. We know it. Through poisoning. Some through accidents in Uganda. So what are we Ugandans afraid of? Why are we afraid telling the world that the Rwandese are killing Ugandans? The Rwandese Tutsis usurped Ugandan government in 1986. Up till now, they're killing Ugandans. We saw what they did in Kasese. Are you waiting until they kill Kyagulanyi? In fact, I'm also appealing to Honorable Kyagulanyi to go worldwide and inform African countries that indeed our country is occupied by a very dangerous, psychotic, genocidal Rwandese Tutsi refugee group. It's dependent on Britain. It's a minority. How can Africa allow a minority to oppress the whole entire region of almost over 200 million people or 200 million people? This Rwandese Tutsi group doesn't even make up 10 million people of the region. But the British and the Western allies are using Rwandese Tutsi minority to kill Ugandans. My fellow indigenous Ugandans. And I'm appealing to Honorable Kyagulanyi to send this message across to the world. Because if you don't, Honorable Kyagulanyi, these Rwandese might even kill you. If you don't, these Rwandese are planning to kill the Kabaka of Buganda. Kyagulanyi, I appeal to you, inform the world about the takeover. Yes, we know you are married to a Rwandese wife. We respect that. I respect your family. And she looks like she supports you. What I'm talking about has nothing to do with hating one group or another. I'm trying to save us from genocide that Museveni and the British Israelis are planning to have take place in Uganda so they can take the resources of Uganda, Congo, Central Africa, and South Sudan. We reject that. We, the people of Africa, want to be left alone. You can come, Israel, Britain, America, every country can come to Africa and work with us. But please don't commit genocide on us. Don't support the genocide of Africans using their fellow Africans to kill them, like what has happened in Rwanda, like what has happened in Uganda, like what has happened in Congo. Black people are being killed everywhere. We see this happening in Papua New Guinea, West Papua. We see people being killed. In this case by Indonesians, supported by Britain, where they have a biggest gold mine in Indonesia, in Papua New Guinea, West Papua. Black people. And then when we say Black Lives Matter, some people don't get it. Now I can say Black Lives Matter is a legitimate statement. It's a legitimate statement. Because of what black people have gone through, the genocide, the killings. We've been wiped out in the entire world. We've actually been wiped out in the countries who were the original inhabitants in Southeast Asia. I was looking at a program in Philippines. The black people live in the bushes. In China, in India, many of those people are mixed with ancient black blood that were killed off. But now they're trying to bring it to Africa to kill us. I'm appealing to so-called European Union, to Canada, to so-called Cara Center that went to Guyana and Suriname and demanded that the black people who were enslaved in those countries hand over power to the Indians. They did it they worked so hard to make sure that these Indians would take over the richest oil finds in the world today, which are in Suriname and Guyana. Where there has been no genocide, where the leaders who were black did not commit genocide on the Indians in Guyana, in the Indians in Suriname. In fact, they stopped genocide in Guyana. The Indians who had been in power prior had actually committed genocide because they were selectively, from what I understand, killing black Guyanese. Over 1,000 Guyanese were killed under the guise of drug trade, under the guise of turning Guyana into a drug transit center. Most people can easily ignore the issue and say, oh, it's black people involved in drug trade. But it's not that simple. We saw how the British used the opium wars in China to take over Chinese territory like Hong Kong, Macau, the Portuguese. We saw that. So drug trade or not, there's this hate for African people across the globe. We're suffering in the Middle East. Our African workers that are going there are being tortured, raped, enslaved. Some of them are there for body part industries. So what are we going to do but appeal to the good citizens of the world to join us? That's why I made this channel, to request the good citizens of the world, including my fellow indigenous Ugandans that are patriotic, good, moral, not to support the Rwandese Tutsi refugees and not to hide for them, because they've committed far too much killings of indigenous Ugandans to be hidden for. The killers, our own Africans killing fellow Africans. And the African Union has done nothing about it except make Kagame the chairman of the African Union. What's going on? How can we even talk so much about white racism and not talk about our own evil within our own African continent? The Africans that are able to commit genocide, kill people in the most horrible way. How? I'm at a loss of words. So I'm appealing to indigenous Ugandans. Please stop fearing, exposing and condemning Rwandese Tutsi genocide and their British puppet masters who have sourced a genocide of over 1.5 million Ugandans in Lugwero, and later more dying. Up to now we're counting up to 3 million Ugandans have died, and the death continues. We suspect that Museveni and his puppet masters are planning to cause a genocide because the Rwandese don't want to leave power in a country where they came as refugees. So we need the help of the world. We need the help of the African Union, the UN. You cannot go to Guyana and Suriname because you want the oil to be taken over by the Indians, not black Africans who were enslaved there, and work so hard, and even put immediate sanctions on the leaders even before they decided, and haven't killed nobody. If they did, in fact, I remember one Indian was killed because he was attacking the police. But in Uganda, we have millions have died. In Congo, millions have died. In South Sudan, because of this small minority of Rwandese Tutsis that Britain, Israel, and former American governments, administration have been supporting. Sorry about that. So I'm calling upon all Ugandans, sorry about that we have to do something. We have to do something, and that is this information has to be exposed. We cannot allow Rwandese Tutsis to kill the Kabaka of Buganda, kill Kyagulanyi, continue to kill Ugandan people power supporters, and we keep quiet because we are afraid. Because of what? The time is now to expose Museveni, Kagame, Kabila, Besigye, Mugisha Muntu, who have been impostering as indigenous Ugandans, pretending to be the opposition. This is the time, my fellow indigenous Ugandans, that we expose this information before it's too late. Thank you and goodbye.